and welcome to another edition of ISG Smartalks, the podcast where we discuss how technology is changing business in all of its forms. And remember, our objective is to educate, to entertain, to inspire our listeners. Today, we're going to be discussing one of the most talked about and disruptive, or potentially disruptive, and probably the most misunderstood, or one of the most misunderstood technologies of our time, which is artificial intelligence, what artificial intelligence or AI means for business of all kinds, who's using it already, what's involved in it, which areas of AI are the most transformational, how to embrace it, where to start, all of those types of things. And today I'm delighted that we have a guest who knows all about AI. So I would like to welcome Mr. Mark Kelly from AI Ireland. So good morning, Mark.
Good morning. How are you?
Good, very good, thank you. And thank you ever so much for joining us on this Tuesday morning. It's most appreciated. So rather than me introducing you, Mark, and doing a terrible job secondhand, I'll ask you to introduce yourself to our listeners. If you could explain a little bit about who you are and also introduce AI Ireland as well.
Yeah, so my name is Mark Kelly. I'm the Chief Customer Officer of Alls International. Alls International is a specialist staffing firm focused in AI with offices in Dublin, Germany, and the US. My background, I do executive search and I'm Chief Customer Officer, particularly within AI. I'm also the founder of AI Ireland, which is a not-for-profit business focused on helping build an ecosystem for companies to come together, share ideas within AI, and also help Ireland be an investment hub for AI investment. I've been working in the AI staffing industry for over 13 years now, but a lot of the work that I do is working kind of senior level decision makers and kind of getting to do kind of executive coaching with them as well as search too. A lot of my time is spent traveling in Europe and Ireland and the US. And most recently, I've conducted 2 podcast series with senior leaders in AI called AI Mentors and AI in Action. And between them, I've conducted over 150 interviews with people and asking them questions. What's hype and what's not in AI, where are the practical benefits and case studies happening at the moment, and what advice would they offer to people going on this journey, either as a technologist or a business user who wants to generate value from that. And that's really kind of got my appetite for this industry, and I'm really excited about what can happen with that. And really for the next 3 to 5 years, I think it's a really interesting point to be in technology, but just things are going to change and it's going to be very exciting to see those changes.
Excellent. No, thank you. And I really want to dip into some of that experience from the interviews that you've carried out. If you've spoken to 150 business leaders or those involved in business and how they're seeing AI, I think our listeners will really benefit from that. So we'll dip into that in a second. But first, let me start with Ireland. Certainly at ISG, we've just opened an office in Dublin, and we're expanding in Ireland. It seems most organizations in the tech industry or who have an interest in the tech industry are expanding in Ireland. I worked there a long time ago when it was the tiger economy and it was all kicking off, and then it went through something of a lull, and now it really seems to have picked up again. Someone was saying to me in Dublin the other day that Dublin's full. There's no office space anywhere, nowhere to park your car, and it all seems to be driven by the technology industry. So is that what you're seeing? Are you seeing economy which is on fire?
Yeah, so I travel a lot around different locations, and you get to see so many different innovations. But Dublin has now become, like a lot of the cities that I see in Europe and the US, it's so far ahead of where I probably thought it'd be 2 years ago. Technology-wise, you've got all the main players, the big four, and a lot of kind of innovative startups here. Office space is particularly challenging to get, and car space is particularly challenging. But Ireland offers enough because it's got a fantastic community, people, access to Europe, one of only a few English-speaking countries, and great gateway from the US as well. I think it's also quite easy to do business here. Like there's a mindset that people want to make things happen, and I think statistically it's probably one of the most productive places to do business in terms of your working week. as well, and it's a very safe country, which is really important when you're raising family and kids too. So from going and seeing different places to work and live, I'm a big fan.
Excellent. No, I'm a big fan too. I love Ireland, lovely place, wonderful people. So let's start talking about artificial intelligence. And before we go into the details, do you want to, from your perspective, when you talk about AI, what's your definition of AI, just for our listeners, so we can all sort of level set? How do you define artificial intelligence?
Yeah, it's a funny one. Out of those 150 interviews, I'd probably say that very few actually agree on this term, right? So it's a wide umbrella term. When you think of AI, you think of trying to replicate the senses, trying to replicate what we do and how we do it and automate it to some point of view. For me, AI has been around since the 1940s, 1950s. An awful lot of this stuff has been seen before, and there's been several different winters where new innovations have come together, and it hasn't necessarily seen the light of day for a few different reasons. The main reason why AI has become more important these days is there's three reasons: access to big data, better algorithms, and ultimately you've got the cloud as well. From my perspective, though, you're automating tasks, and you're trying to do a better business function, and you're trying to add more value to it. And that's where I see the innovations coming down the line. And there's a lot of hype around AI being able to do poetry, paintings, autonomous vehicles. But a lot of AI is just automating a task to make the better business user or make it more enjoyable to society.
Excellent, good. Yeah, we'll get into sort of narrow AI and general AI in a second. You reminded me of something that happened at the weekend. We were bank holiday weekend this weekend, and we were playing Pictionary with my nieces and nephews. And certainly I was terrible at trying to understand what a 4-year-old is trying to draw on a piece of paper. But at our kickoff in January at ISG, we were working with an AI organization, or we were demoing something where I drew pictures on a screen, and a computer effectively guessed what I was drawing in a Pictionary style. So I would be drawing a picture of an aeroplane, and it would guess it correctly, or a person or a building. And definitely with my drawing quality, you can tell that AI has certainly come on leaps and bounds. But we'll maybe come on to that in a second, because I wanted to talk about something that you'd mentioned, which is effectively it's just automation, or in a way. Or I'm not sure, I might be misphrasing you there, but it's certainly focused on automation. And automation is something that I've been involved in for a long time, and ISG are very involved in. And we do a lot of advisory services around robotic process automation, relatively simple software to automate manual and rules-based digital tasks. And we've seen that expand exponentially. It's now a many multi-billion industry, with the large software vendors valued in their billions. In fact, UiPath were valued at 7 billion only last week. And so we've seen organizations start to embrace robotic process automation, which is relatively simple. And I think anybody would argue that there's anything artificially intelligent about that. However, they seem to be using the RPA base that they've set up and the experience which they're generating to move into intelligent OCR and bits of machine learning, potentially as a precursor to moving into different bits of AI. Does that resonate with you?
Very much so. Very much so. You see, that's the natural way of where it's going, and a lot of these things are trained. So when you think of machine learning, you're training a lot of the algorithms to actually make these decisions when they actually happen as well. Now, some of this stuff can be seen as interchangeable, where you might have some if-then rules. So for a business user or someone who's not technical listening to this, if you're putting in your key into your car and you put your foot down on the accelerator or the clutch, when you do certain, you'll get a response, and then the car will go. And that's the same with some of these algorithms that might necessarily be as complicated with it. But the reality is that anything that can be automated, and then you can add some intelligence to it, that's really going to add a lot of benefits to the user, because where you're trying to go into is trying to give a personalized response for a lot of automation. So where you see is pricing being personalized, or if you look at predictions of maintenance for machinery, for example. And that's where you're taking some automated tasks and then you're adding some intelligence to them that actually adding a lot more benefit to the users as well. And that's where the kind of the combinations of them. And then you're adding in where the human needs to get involved in, which is higher up the food chain as well. So there's an awful lot of blending with these things. When you look at the industries that are opening up to this place, pretty insurance comes to mind, where people for years, if they were 25 to 35 and they lived in certain locations, they would get a certain insurance premium, pretty much standard to similar people or profile of their background. Now you can take into consideration their personal habits. You can even have a Fitbit monitoring their wellness, how many steps they're actually taking, their food habits. You can look at their car driving in terms of if you can track them with telematics, and then you can monitor their behavior. And again, if you're willing to give up your data and be more transparent with that, then you can get actually cheaper and better quotes. And really what that's doing is it's giving more personalized pricing. And this is where probably AI is different across a variety of different industries. And we can look at telecoms for that, regular marketing for that. I mentioned predictive maintenance for ships, machinery, planes, engines. It's predicting when you will need maintenance of different parts for different machinery or plane engines. That can just save so much money for companies, because the last thing you want to be doing is finding out you need to maintain an engine of a plane when it's up in the air. And this is where you're adding the intelligence to the automated process, and that's what's making better value for the business user. And you can pretty much apply this to every industry. You just need to be a little bit creative in how you actually go about solving the problem that you want to solve.
Yes, absolutely. I think that predictive analytics in general, but predictive maintenance has huge potential. I was reading something about a tires as a service facility for a major global distributor who had lorries effectively on roads around the world, that rather than just changing their tires at set intervals as they always had in the past, they added sensors into their tires and changed the tires when they needed to be changed, which enabled them to link the whole supply chain and saved them millions by just that simple piece of information.
And even just, Barry, just on that example, if you look at logistics or transportation in general, there's such a small margins to be made in that industry that the difference between being profitable and not profitable can be the truck drivers, how hard they're actually putting their foot to the gas. That can actually genuinely be a difference between being profitable or not profitable. So if you can knock off extra margins such as that, it's very interesting. And you're looking at 3 million truck drivers in the US. They're already driving around trucks. They're showing that it can be done really safely and a lot more efficiently with sensors and lights, cameras all around the trucks that are driving in the dark. So it's a really interesting industry that will be disrupted in one way or another. But that's a great example of how you can knock margins further down.
Yeah, and I know I've done quite a lot of work in retail, and retailers are using algorithms now to achieve the nirvana for a retailer, let's say a grocery retailer, which is to get the exact right amount of stock of produce, especially a perishable produce, on the shelves, on the right shelves in the right shops at the right time. So if we just put online aside for a second, but if you're walking into a grocery store, the grocer wants to know exactly how many carrots or potatoes or lettuces or cucumbers you're going to buy at a certain point in time. And having too many, which then of course they can't use and perish, attacks their margin. And having too few and missing out on a sale attacks their margin. So using an algorithm which looks at weather and events and seasonality and what happened last year, et cetera, and does that all dynamically using an algorithm, I know is having huge impact on the grocery industry.
Yeah, and I used to work in Brown Thomas while I was working in college, and now it's completely changed. You walk into the store, you'll have a personalized experience. So you'll be drawn to certain areas, you'll be given real-time updates on offers. You can walk into some stores and the mirror is be able to give you different looks. So let's say you want to see what this jacket and shoes looks like on a night out. You can change the colors. if you want to get extra stock, rather than reaching out and ask for the sales assistant, you press the button and somebody will actually reach out and send you back what you need, what you require, because you can actually update it online. And depending on the stores you're in the US, you're being tracked in terms of what you're looking at, what you're engaged in. So then for future reference, when you go back, they'll actually know what's happening. And what's particularly interesting is that for a lot of companies, they're tracking everything you're doing online, but now they're looking at you through computer vision of how you walk an aisle. What do you look at? So if you've recently had new kids, what you're probably going to be looking at for diapers or baby powder or whatever, and maybe you'll grab a 6-pack of beer, knowing that you might necessarily be going out for the weekend, so you might actually take a takeaway. So all your different eyes, gazes, and what's going to be important to you, and then that will dictate the shopping experience that you will have. And as you kind of mentioned, a lot of the time now you can go into some Amazon stores and that actually you don't necessarily have to pay. You just will automatically walk out of the store and you'll be deducted too. So all the different types of experiences retail is changing, but it's become personalized. And context is extremely important. And an example on financial industry, I've got a credit card that's continuously giving me updates of points. But I've got a credit card company who I recently signed up to that were really specific in engaging with me. We know that you use a lot of air miles. So if you engage with ourselves, we will give you a free upgrade to business service, or you will get these different types of points in a lounge. And that's a lot more contextual and personalized to me. So I'm going to use that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said at the beginning, data is one of the most important elements in getting AI to work properly. All of the examples we've talked about require data to be able to be extracted, to be compared, to be swapped, to be matched. And organizations that don't have a way of using or accessing insight from their data presumably won't be able to benefit, or in many instances benefit from some of the types of technology that we've been talking about. How do organizations get a data strategy and get their data in the right order to be able to reap these rewards?
Yeah, and when we were looking at companies that were very successful at applying AI and actually generating the benefits from their data, there was one or two things that were really common. They went on the data journey, and it's a pretty disgusting journey to go on, because it's like a data janitor. You have to get all your data ready. So if you could imagine thousands and thousands of files on Excel, and they're all trying to categorize the different elements. Well, across your business unit, there might be one way to actually log data. So you might have one doctor putting in certain information about a human being that they've just seen, and then a different doctor showing a different patient different data to access that. So when you're cross-referencing, it's very difficult. So you won't be able to use that data. So trying to get the data all fit for purpose means that you go through the data knowing that a lot of the data you have isn't relevant. So when you use a lot of fancy statistical models, you need a lot of data to really kind of get the value out of them, particularly deep learning, for example. Yeah. So when companies are trying to sell some AI solutions, they can promise this magic red button. But the reality is it can take between 18 months to 2 years to actually be able to earn the right to use these algorithms. But once they do, and they have the data fit for purpose, you can really generate some insights. And that could be a 1 or 2% uplift on sales. Yeah. And 1% or 2% mightn't necessarily sound like a lot, but that could be 300 to 500 million extra revenue, depending on the company or the target size as well, or the people here trying to target. So it's something that I would always offer advice to companies to say that if you're going on this journey, understand the problem you're trying to solve. Maybe spend 90% of your time figuring that out, because if you're solving a problem that doesn't actually need to be solved or added to, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. And I see particularly a lot of companies who do the "wouldn't it be cool" snare, where let's do this, and suddenly you're down quite a substantial amount of money, and there can be a lot of unrest internally, because people give up their time to help with these data projects. And if they're not done effectively, it actually can be really bad for morale and can impact the business even further. So you need to start off small, get an MVP, iterate, talk to the different business units, and understand that there's 3 or 4 main factors why some of these projects fail. And the top one is inaccessibility data, where they actually just can't get the data from internally. Yep. Second is dirty data. Third would be talent shortage, where they actually just can't generate the talent. And then fourth is probably senior leadership commitment, because to do this, you need to have senior leaders behind it, because it's quite a journey. It costs quite a bit of money, and you need to be there to see it through. So there's some of the main factors to be mindful for when you do go on it. But for a lot of companies, they feel like now's the time to actually make that change and go on that. And this is where we're seeing really interesting case studies coming to market now, which is really proving exciting for society in general.
Yeah, I think there's some really good advice for our listeners there. Some good practical tips on the errors to avoid, or if you like, the critical success factors to have in place. And certainly in some of the things we preach are think big, start small, scale fast when we're talking RPA or moving into different disruptive technologies. And we also see this innovation theatre quite a lot. Organizations spending quite a bit in doing something which looks really flash, but doesn't actually add that much business value. So getting the basics right, doing those fine marginal gains, which for a global business can have multi-million dollar impacts, I think is really important if you're trying to get operational efficiency. I wanted to ask you, which we talked a little bit about retail, a little bit about financial services, a little bit about logistics, but in the discussions with the 150 business people you've spoken to, which industries jump out at you as the ones that are most progressive in terms of using these technologies?
I think you'd probably look at marketing. So a lot of targeted marketing would be, and digital marketing is something that really comes to the power. You think of like NLP and semantic searches and recommendations. So people nowadays, they just want their time to be saved. So if I'm going to watch a show on Netflix or Amazon Prime, I don't want to see a show that's going to waste my time, because I really want to be careful about that. So I'm probably going to ask my friends, have they watched anything good? I'm going to check to see what people say on Rotten Tomatoes, for example, about a show. So it's really driven by recommendations. So the companies that can get the right products to you and understand the context that you're interested in would be successful. So when you're making a purchase, and let's say you're going to be buying new football shoes for your son, they might know that you might need football socks, you might need a football bag or kit bag, whatever it might well be. It's trying to understand what's relevant, because people nowadays have got very little, I suppose, patience. So if you feel like you're not hitting the mark, the consumer will just move on. So just doing a good job is just table stakes now. It's the case of how do you excel? How do you give that incredible customer experience? And for a lot of companies, is understanding that customer segment in detail. So defining who is their customer, why do they shop, what's the context of shopping like that. And NLP and semantic search is really interesting. So NLP, for people that are listening in, is a case of where you're trying to generate all different kinds of sentiments through text. So let's say a brand wants to know what people are saying and talking about them. Before, they might used to do focus groups or consumer surveys. Now they can go from Twitter, Google searches to Facebook, all the different pros and cons about their product, for example. And that's fantastic information to get, because you can get real in the moment type of feedback that companies can take on, iterate and change, and really see what's working and what's not working. The other stuff is quite interesting is telecoms. So telecoms, what a kind of a really, you've got so much data. So if you look at Gartner, for example, Gartner forecasts by 2020, 20.4 billion connected devices. And when you look at that, you've got so much data there that they can be actually coming together to say, right, how do we improve operations, network efficiency, how do we improve customer service, improve add-ons and additional information. And that, for me, is something that's particularly interesting, but you can take that to the next stage as well. I've been pretty inspired by data science in healthcare too. So when you look at some of the work that's been done in computer vision in image of tumors, for example, you're looking at between 97% to 98% success rate in actually defining tumors. Now, that's on the basis of the image reports being of very, very high quality. But oncologists are probably looking at maybe 75 to 80% success rates. So already, if you've got a human and computer vision mixed together, that's a fantastic service for different users. And in China, they're really doing massive advances on that, because using AI is not an option. You just have to do it. So there's some really interesting areas. I flew over a chief data scientist from the Los Angeles Children's Hospital for an event we held in Dublin recently. And he was talking about some of ways that you can leverage data science for pediatrics. And one of the examples he gave was that when a child comes in, it usually might take 48 hours before they know whether or not that child could be allergic to certain medicines in certain cases. Now, if your child is sick, the last thing you want to be waiting is 48 hours to actually administer different prescription medicine. But by using certain data science techniques, they cut it down to 45 minutes before they could actually administer patient care. And the results of that were just huge. You know, the impact to the child, the impact to staff morale. And by showing some of those benefits, what that proved to be was people being so bought into data science that they had loads of different ideas. They were all trying out these different proof of concepts. And that was fantastic to see how, if you get data science right, you will win an awful lot of backers. And for a lot of companies who are driving through innovative AI projects and case studies, is trying to get those internal champions that on testimonials that will really share the benefits and driving it forward. But they'd probably be the main ones that would jump out for me. But actually, if you add to that, you've got security surveillance. So people talk about smart cities, but for a lot of people, it's safe cities. So let's say you're beside the local train station. There's a place where somebody's is known for a lot of theft or small theft of handbags or bicycles being stolen. By looking at tracking the whereabouts of those events and looking at where people usually run off to after they've taken a handbag, for example, you can spot to say, okay, this corner site is very hard to follow if you're in pursuit of someone who's just taken a bag. Well, let's change all that. Let's make it more difficult for that person to access that site, and let's make it that they have to be on the main road. Consequently, people might be more reluctant to actually take that handbag, because they know if they take that handbag, they're going to be seen on Main Street rather than go down a back alleyway. And by using analytics, they can actually look at all these different cases that have been reported on over the last couple of years to be used proactive steps to actually manage those different types of cycles. So that's something that could be particularly of interest when making society safer. And one last one that comes to mind would be that if you look at hedge funds will invest in certain companies. And one of the ways that they do that is looking at sales within their company, but they don't always necessarily get all the sales records in between quarters. So you might look at Walmart, or you might look at Macy's. And one way that you can dictate if the company is more successful this year versus last year is to see how many cars are in the car park. So if you look at that, they've got satellite imagery looking at all the different car parks across Macy's or Walmart across the US. And as simple as count up the cars. Is there more cars in Macy's on Tuesday 2019 versus Tuesday December 2018? And if there is, chances are they're probably doing more sales. And if you want to look at an oil rig off Papua New Guinea, well, you can find out within minutes if that oil rig is actually generating oil, or if they've actually moved off site, and that could be a different reason for investing. So there's loads of ways that you can check.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, as you say, it's everything from, hedge funds, financial services, retailers, telecommunication, and from to health and crime, and keeping our streets safer. So this type of technology really does have applications and big implications across industry. Okay, great. Thanks very much, Mark. So what I want to do now is to turn to the 5 questions that we ask. So let's kick off with the first one. So Mark, which technology, and I might know the answer given what we've just been discussing, but which technology has had the biggest influence on your career so far?
So this is actually a tight one, because I spent 4.5 years working Java. So I spent 4.5 years working Java and getting under the hood of Java, and I met over 1,800 Java software developers in 4.5 years. And I became literally fanatical about the language. And I still love the language myself, and I could do some bad coding too. So I believe AI will have the biggest impact, but so far the biggest impact has actually been Java. So that's had, in terms of who I've met, my relationships, understanding technology. That's been so far. And there, again, Java and AI, they're really coming together anyway in terms of the applications. But so far to date, Java has.
Interesting. So save part of your answer, because I'm going to ask you another question in a second. Yeah. About the future. But the second question that we always ask our guests is, which technology in your experience promised the most? What were you most excited about, but then delivered so little, or delivered the least? So what was overhyped and then underdelivered?
Yeah, so I do know some people in this area, so I'm guessing I'm going to get some emails on this, but probably blockchain. I've really hoped for more from blockchain. Now, I know this because certain companies will tell me I'm talking crap, but I haven't seen what's been hoped for blockchain personally. And again, the legal profession will be calling me, and I just haven't seen it. And maybe I'm open to other people giving me more case studies where I'd like to see more of that technology.
Yeah, it's interesting. Some people, it's definitely polarized views, and maybe it's just a question of time. Maybe it's overhyped so far, and soon it's going to have this huge disruptive impact that some people think it will have. Time will tell. So yes. Let's move on to our third question. Changing direction slightly. I'm a bit of a gadget freak, so as soon as the latest technology comes out, I want it. In fact, I've just been researching buying a ring for my finger to track my fitness, as opposed to a watch, because watches are all so last year. But what gadget have you used in your professional or in your personal life, or maybe that you use now, which has had the greatest impact or the greatest success?
I love Bluetooth earphones. I love really good Bluetooth earphones. So I used to read 3 to 4 books a month. I used to be fanatical about reading, and then when my kids came along, just reading became just non-negotiable. I just couldn't do it. But when I got a good pair of Bluetooth earphones, I can clean around the house. I can listen to them when I'm cycling to work on the cycle lanes in terms of an audio book. If I'm going to the gym, I can listen to music. If I'm making a Skype call, if I'm speaking to salespeople, sales call, whatever it might be, Bluetooth earphones are just so handy that they give you a really good reception that you can type and talk. And I just find them fantastic, particularly when you've got kids, when they're trying to grab at you and do things. You can even watch Netflix as you cook the dinner or whatever on an iPad, and you've got your Bluetooth earphones, and you're just left alone. And I just a good pair of them. I'm always trying to get better sets with longer battery. So I'm a big fan of that.
Excellent. Well, I don't know whether you've listened to our first Smart Talks podcast episode, but Steve and I did our favorite gadgets, and mine were the Neurophone. So if you've not seen Neurophones yet, they are the most amazing noise-cancelling Bluetooth headphones that you'll ever put on. And I'm not getting permission from Neurophone, but lots of people have asked me about them since. So have a look at Neurophone. They're just an incredible set of headphones.
Yeah, that's you stick them on going on a flight, and it's game over for everybody else.
You need to listen to all of your sort of music, again, because you hear different things, such as the quality
Yeah,
of.
it's another reason for people to disengage with me as I put on extra noise cancelling earphones to be away from everybody else. Thanks for that, Barry.
Well, I always find whether I'm listening to anything or not, if there's someone on the train who starts wanting to talk to me, I want to do something else. I just pop on the noise cancelling headphones.
Yes.
And
I do find myself on airplanes with noise cancelling earphones and also, it's kind of blackout iPads. So you're literally just completely gone from society until you log back out. Yeah,
long out for a couple of hours. Yeah. So, okay. So our penultimate question: which technology do you think is going to be most disruptive over the next decade?
So I think, obviously, I'm going to say AI. But when you look at 5G, some of the things that are actually happening in that is just incredible. I saw a couple of weeks back surgery that had been done facilitated by 5G as well, and some of the innovations that's going to bring down the line truly look incredible. To see what's going to happen with it. We can always look for the big bang of what's going to happen next, but a lot of the innovations that are happening in AI are just going to be really helpful. So let's say you break your phone or your phone gets stolen. Usually you'd have to go into a store like Carrefour Warehouse, go through a long process, make calls, get it cancelled, all these different things.
Yeah.
What about a chatbot that does all that for you? They literally just go through all the different areas, they pick out the phone and it's delivered to you within hours. Or you're looking for that document and you can never find that document and it's on your desktop, your enterprise search. And it's just literally these little kind of small marginal gains innovations that are just going to make business users just so much happier with their day to day. Or say you're setting up your notes for your call, you've got an assistant that's just helping you now, actually giving you that information, booking your calendar report. These are just simple marginal gains that actually make such a big difference. And I think AI is just facilitating a lot of that, which is just really, really helpful. And I think
I agree. I totally agree. And I think you're right with 5G. I think 5G is the glue that links a lot of these innovative, disruptive technologies together. And as soon as we see 5G become pervasive, it's really going to change the way we use some of these other technologies. So great answer. And then our final question. We talk about technology all of the time, but what about people? And who's been your technology hero in your life so far?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I don't think, when you think of hero, you think of people being sometimes perfect, or you think of somebody who's without giving out about them, or they necessarily might have a part of them that might necessarily be what you want it to be. But somebody I've really admired from afar has been Steve Jobs. The guy is he just transformed so many different self personally. Like he was obviously successful, then he had failures. As a person, he obviously had failures, but he transformed. He had a lot of empathy, very fantastic listening ability, and then the innovation to bring across a product that nobody saw coming. And it's probably only when he's gone that you could see how poor the innovations have been since he's gone, in terms of it's just more marginal gains rather than completely transformative. And his perspective and approach seemed really, really interesting as well. So from afar, he's probably one that, as an enigma, he seems pretty fascinating to me. And again, depending on who you talk to, they've got good stories about him or negative stories about him. And that's probably where I was talking about the hero aspect. I don't necessarily know if he's a hero, but he's somebody that I'm really inspired by some of the work that he's done in terms of how he disrupted different markets and innovations. And
great answer. In fact, I totally agree. He has been such a he was such a pioneer. If you just think of the way we use products now, the way we use our phone, the way we use our iPhone, for everything, or our iPad. But some of the other things, the way he transformed retail, to think of a technology provider like Apple with the type of store that Apple opened 10 years ago, which are now synonymous with everything Apple, the open plan nature, the staircases, the Genius Bar, these things were all his sort of brainchild. It was just such an incredible guy, but as you say, like a challenging guy but for those who knew him or worked with him as well, and not always a success. Had many failures in his life, but yeah, what an incredible technology he was.
And he just had a growth mindset. He was just literally wanted to develop. He wanted to grow, and for a lot of people, it's nice to get that praise and recognition all the time. And he was just challenged that. He challenged just to try to do different things differently, and he was consistently unreasonable. And sometimes when you talk about people who are reasonable, you don't necessarily have a good feeling about them, but you can be unreasonable because you can generate results. And this person is consistently did that. And I think that's a nice way to live your life, is not to be concerned about being unreasonable if there's a bigger benefit for everybody at the end of it, rather than maintaining the status quo. So, and I think AI has got a lot of opportunity to disrupt things to where they have been and just give a better customer experience. And AI is just a tool for digital transformation. It's just one of tools to help make better decisions and allow for a more effective business-to-business engagement of society. And that's all it is. It's just a better customer journey. But he was fanatical about improving that customer journey. And I just remember opening up the earphones for the Apple. And the boxes were just ergonomically so well designed, and BMW took such inspiration and innovation from that. And if you look at anything now, it's the box, it's the experience, it's the shopping experience. And I've worked in retail. People don't necessarily buy your product for your product. People buy that experience of shopping there, having the bag, being seen in the store, having that one-on-one connection, and that's so much more sometimes than the product itself. So it's pretty fanatical. He was pretty fanatical about that, and I was pretty kind of inspired by that.
Yeah, no, great answer. I think we could have a whole episode on Steve Jobs. What a guy he was. But so, Mark, thank you ever so much for your time today. It's been a really interesting, informative, and entertaining, certainly for me anyway, conversation. So really appreciate you joining us. I wish you all the best with continuing with AI Ireland, and I look forward to talking to you again sometime soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Barry. Thank you very much.